Robots Radio presents...
Hi there, and welcome to the Hidden Pixels podcast, a show highlighting those gaming stories you might have missed on your first playthrough. I'm your host, Sebastian Nazaro. In this episode, we're taking the tractor out to the farm, exploring the world of Stardew Valley. In this tremendous indie game from Concerned Ape, you play as a former city dweller who moves to the country to take over your grandpa's farm. From there, you can kind of do whatever you want, from farming to fishing to mining. You can also interact with the local townsfolk, developing relationships and even getting married. And that's right where this story will lead. Oh, and make sure you stick around after the story for the winner of our Hollow Knight giveaway, along with some other news about the show. Alright, let's dive in. "6 a.m. The rooster crowed out in the barn, and the farmer rose quickly from their bed. It was the first night sleeping on Gentlewood Farms, and they barely got any rest. You see, the farmer used to live in nearby Zuzu City, working in a dull grade office. Every day they left their small, cramped apartment, took a crowded, sweltering bus downtown, and then worked in a hushed, bland cubicle. It was the same thing, day after day after day. That all changed when the farmer's grandfather passed away. He was the original owner of Gentlewood Farms, but the farmer hadn't seen him in years. In fact, they had never even visited the farm way out in Stardew Valley. So it was much to their surprise when their grandpa left the entire farm to them as an inheritance. It took the farmer about a week to mull it over, but it was finally decided. They were going to pack everything away and move out to Stardew Valley. They were going to learn how to run the farm. They arrived pretty late in the day the previous evening, meeting Robin, the local carpenter, and Lewis, the mayor of nearby Pelican Town. By the time they got settled in and learned the lay of the land, it was time to head to bed. Now, waking by rooster cries and the rising sun flittering through the window, the farmer was ready to tackle the day. They stepped out onto their front porch, the worn wood creaking under their feet. Grandpa didn't exactly keep up with the routine maintenance these past few years. And by that, I mean the place was kind of a dump. The farmhouse was cozy, but desperately needed some repairs and a new coat of paint. The path leading up to it was just a dusty trail. And the fields, well, I guess you could call them fields. Overrun by weeds and rocks and tree stumps, the farmer would have been surprised if they could get anything to grow there at all. But just when they were about to get overwhelmed by the amount of work needed to be done, a light breeze rustled their hair. They closed their eyes and breathed deep, smelling the fresh grass and hearing the birds of the nearby wood chattering. As they opened their eyes, their entire view changed. Okay, this was going to be work, but it sure does beat working in that dark office. They stepped off the porch and rolled up their sleeves, ready to start clearing the fields. Over the next few days, the farmer had made some real headway. Every rock had been smashed, every stump had been unrooted, every brush had been scythed. On Friday morning, they stepped outside to the open potential. They could plant any kind of seed they wanted. The possibilities were endless. Excited by this, they hurried off down the dusty road, ready to finally check out Pelican Town. The town itself was a large public square, flanked with multiple houses and shops. The farmer saw a tavern, a medical clinic, and a general store scattered among the cute cottages. It was a complete contrast to the concrete congestion that was Zuzu City. A few of the locals were going about their business, while checking out the newcomer in the corners of their eyes. Still, they all seemed friendly enough. It was then when the farmer noticed Mayor Lewis nearby, outside of the medical clinic. They walked over and greeted the mayor, happy to see a familiar face. Lewis shook the farmer's hand with a smile. "You're in town early, huh? Finished with your farm chores already?" The farmer explained that they were finally getting a chance to check out the town, and asked if there was anything in particular they should see. Lewis thought for a moment before responding. The saloon can get pretty lively at night. Sometimes we even put a coin in the jukebox. I like to visit once a week or so to catch up on things anyway. The farmer was polite, but had to remind themselves that a small town fun was going to be a lot different than the Zuzu City nightlife. They said goodbye to Lewis and headed down towards the general store. Before they entered, though, they noticed a community bulletin board outside. On it was a calendar referencing birthdays and holidays, a notice board for communications around town, and a map of the area. The farmer took a second to take it all in, noticing that there was a large forest to the southwest, a desert to the northwest, mountains just north of town, and the coast just south of it. Because, nature just works like that, and it was by no means all placed there by a game designer at all. The farmer entered the general store and was greeted warmly by the man behind the counter. Welcome to Pierre's. I carry only the finest goods. The farmer introduced themselves to Pierre behind the counter. He seemed warm and friendly, which was good seeing how the farmer would be relying on him for seeds to start the farm. They ended up buying as much parsnip and cauliflower seeds as they could afford, anxious to get planting. After thanking Pierre, they hustled back home, ready to get started on their first crop. Phew! The farmer had worked all day long, digging and planting and watering. They now sat on the worn stairs of their porch, looking over the land. Drinking a large glass of water in the glowing sunset, they were happy with what they had accomplished today. It was a feeling unlike any they had experienced in the city. It was unabashed pride. The farmer gulped down the rest of their drink, ready to reward themselves. All day long, Lewis's words repeated in their mind. The saloon could get pretty lively at night. Looks like it was time to meet the rest of the town. About an hour later, the farmer entered the Star Drop Saloon. It was a mostly wooden bar with plenty of tables and chairs along the walls for seating. A portly man with a mustache was tending bar behind the counter, and a blue-haired girl was cleaning mugs as fast as she could. The bar was crowded, with almost every table and chair filled. It seemed like the entire town was there. The farmer saw Lewis ordering a drink at the counter and eased up next to him. Lewis raised his beer in the farmer's direction and laughed. Good evening. I'm glad to see you relaxing at the saloon. It's good for you to take a break now and then. He then put a hand on the farmer's shoulder. Your grandfather always worked himself too hard. I'll have an extra beer in his honor tonight. The farmer bought one as well and drank it heartily. Wanting to meet some other townsfolk besides Lewis, they sidled away from the counter. Looking around, everyone seemed to be in their own conversations. The farmer finished their drink at the counter and ordered another from the mustached man. They walked over to the nearby fireplace, letting the roaring warmth hit their flushed face. And that's when they noticed the nearby side room. They entered, seeing a large pool table and several arcade cabinets. There were also 3 people around the farmer's age, a blonde-haired guy, a black-haired guy, and a girl with purple hair sitting on the couch. The guys were laughing and playing pool while the girl was watching them. They seemed like a friendly group, and the farmer took a deep breath as they approached. The purple-haired girl perked up when she saw them. Oh, that's right. I heard someone was moving into that old farm. She introduced herself as Abigail. It's kind of a shame, really. I always enjoyed exploring those overgrown fields by myself. The farmer thought that was a little weird, but turned to introduce themselves to the 2 guys. The blonde-haired kid was Sam, while the one with the darkened hair was Sebastian. His eyes were the same blackish purple as his hair, and he gave the farmer a look over before speaking. Oh, you just moved in? Cool. He paused for a moment, still looking the farmer over. Out of all the places you could live, you chose Pelican Town? The farmer heard Sam and Abigail chuckle as they tried to explain to the group about their grandpa passing the farm on to them. As the farmer continued, they stopped sniggering and began listening with rapt attention to the farmer's time in the city and their need to escape the crush of that kind of lifestyle. When the farmer finished a few minutes later, they were flushed with emotion and slight embarrassment. The farmer expected the worst after opening up to these strangers, but instead of making fun or blowing the farmer off, They listened intently. The farmer had never felt this warmth before. In Zuzu City, if you try to open up emotionally, people would shun you. The farmer never had any close friends when they lived there, and it ended up being a pretty bleak place to live. But now this was different. Not in a dirt on your boots, wake up at 6 a.m. type of different either. Sebastian placed his hand on their shoulder and invited them to play pool. The farmer relaxed with the group the rest of the night, finally able to settle into country living. A few weeks later, the farmer found themselves waking up to a torrential downpour. They had planned a full day in the fields, but it looks like the budding parsnips and cauliflower would have to wait until this sudden storm passed. Now, provided with a full free day, the farmer figured it was as good a time as any to visit Sebastian up in the mountains. The farmer had been hanging with Sebastian, Abigail, and Sam on each Friday for the past 3 weeks. Soon they found it was the highlight of their week, and they couldn't wait to see their friends again. Last week, Sebastian mentioned that he lived up in the mountains north of town with his family. The farmer hadn't explored up there before, so they figured they'd at least get to do that if Sebastian wasn't home. Sebastian's mother, Robin, answered the door. The farmer remembered meeting her on their first day on the farm. Robin had welcomed them to the valley and offered her carpentry services if anything needed fixing. She warmly welcomed the farmer in and told them that Sebastian was in his room downstairs. The farmer knocked and entered quietly. Being in the basement, the room was pretty dark. A couple of smaller lamps were on, as was the large computer monitor glowing in the corner. Sebastian was working at the PC, quickly typing something, and barely looking up to see who had entered. "Oh, hey, give me 1 sec. He continued to type while the farmer looked around the room awkwardly. A table with a tabletop game stood in the opposite corner of the computer, and the walls were lined with strange band posters and pictures of orcs and goblins. Who knew Sebastian was such a nerd? Sebastian kept going for a few minutes, but just when the farmer considered coming back later, he stopped. "Okay, sorry about that. Just needed to finish what I was working on." The farmer came over to the computer and asked what his project was. Sebastian leaned back in the chair, looking somewhat happy for the break. "I do freelance work as a programmer." But before he could continue, a message popped up on his screen. Taking a deep sigh, Sebastian clicked it open. That's an instant message from Sam. I guess he wants to hang out. I don't really feel like going out today. There was a knock at the door, and Robin came in. "Sebby, I know you don't like it when I come in here, but I ran into Abigail at the store, and she said she was looking for you." Sebastian looked stressed. Between the work he was doing and now Sam and Abigail bugging him, the farmer was starting to feel bad about dropping in unexpected. "Did you tell her I'm working?" Sebastian couldn't hide his annoyance. Robin sighed this time. "I did, but she said that she'd probably stop by anyway." Sebastian pushed the keyboard in frustration. "No one takes my job seriously. No one bothers Maru when she's working at the clinic. Does everyone think I'm just surfing the web all day?" This wasn't the first time that the farmer heard Sebastian reference his younger sister, and they couldn't help but feel that he was just a little jealous. Robin shrugged and left, but the farmer put the keyboard back in place. They asked what Sebastian had planned as far as career goals. "Well, I'm trying to save up so I can move out of here. Probably to the city or something." He closed his eyes before continuing. "You know, if I had gone to college, I'd probably be making 6 figures by now. I just don't want to be a part of that corporate rat race, you know?" He shifted a little in his seat and paused for a second. "Well, and I guess I feel more comfortable hidden behind the computer than dealing with people face to face." The farmer smiled, understanding the feeling of being anxious around a lot of other people. Sebastian seemed to be feeling a little better too after talking. He looked up and back at his computer. "Well, I should get back to work. I need to get this module finished by tomorrow." He smiled at the farmer and then went back to typing. The farmer left, feeling better about their relationship with Sebastian, even if he was a little more complicated than he first seemed. farmer kept working, kept planting and watering and harvesting their crops. And before they knew it, spring turned right into the height of summer. The parsnips and cauliflower turned into summer corn and sunflowers. The temperatures went up, and the farmer was looking for as many ways as possible to stay cool. While most of the villagers headed down to the shore, the farmer actually started spending more time up in the mountains, where the air was just a little chillier. It was on one of these summer days when they randomly ran into Sebastian again. They still saw each other every Friday night, but they also started running into each other more often outside. While the farmer made sure not to bother him when he was working at home, they noticed that he often liked to hang out and smoke by the lake near his house. They would chat a bit, and it seemed that their talks broke him a bit out of his usually gloomy mood. On this particular day, the farmer noticed Sebastian outside of his house working on a motorcycle. He looked up and saw the farmer. Sliding out from under the bike, he wiped some grease off on his pants. "Oh, hey." He stopped short, noticing the farmer's puzzled expression. "What? You haven't seen my motorcycle before?" "I guess I haven't shown it to you." He slid back under, starting to work again with a coy smirk on his face. The farmer couldn't help but feel like he was joking with them. "Sometimes, after sundown, I make the long ride out of Stardew Valley. There's nothing else like it, blazing along an empty stretch of road toward the faint city glow. Once I've saved up enough money, I'm going to head out on my own, to the city and beyond. Just me and my bike." The farmer had never seen Sebastian so happy, so at peace with the world. He was in a full-on daydream, thinking about the day he could escape out and beyond the small country world he knew. After a moment, he came back to. "There we go. Oil's changed." He slid back out from under the bike and looked up at the farmer. He had a sheepish glow in his dark eyes and gave that smirk again. "Hey, maybe I'll let you ride sometime. If you want." The farmer blushed, taken by surprise, but honored. This seemed to be Sebastian's pride and joy, and it must be a big deal for him to ask someone to go out on a ride with him. The farmer nodded. "Yeah, that sounds like fun." Now it was Sebastian's turn to blush. He nervously let out an okay before waving and getting back to work. The farmer continued on their hike down the mountain trail. The air seemed fresher, the birds chirping clearly, and the sky was bright and blue. The farmer felt that warmth in their chest once again, and they knew it had nothing to do with the summer heat. They didn't even see the man sitting by a campfire just off the side of the trail. "You know, I think he may be interested in you, farmer." The farmer stopped dead in their tracks, not sure what to do. They looked around for a place to run, inner city instincts kicking in. But the old man seemed used to this hesitancy. "No need to be alarmed. I'm just Linus. I live back here in these hills and have been watching that family grow for years. That boy had never invited no one to take a ride on his bike before. Yup. I would say little Sebby is definitely interested in you, farmer." The farmer didn't know what to say, so they smiled and thanked the man before continuing down the path. Well, that was strange, but sweet. Even if the words were coming from old Linus, it was nice to hear them confirmed. That maybe there was something more than friendship going on.
Hello.
Hi.
Do you like bad movies?
Do you find yourself defending bad movies, saying things like, well, the soundtrack was okay, or the costumes were pretty fun?
From the previous hosts of It's Not That Bad podcast, we bring you Fresh Tomatoes, the movie podcast, from Simone LaRue and Chad Ekovitz.
Every week, we review 2 movies that did not do well critically, but we say, hey, there are some nice things about them. Maybe Rotten Tomatoes was wrong.
Maybe they're all fools, and you should watch these movies regardless. We'll also talk about scenes that could have saved it, and we'll often refer to Simone's cats because they're amazing and adorable, and we love them.
And at the end of each review, we will tell you whether we would watch this movie again, or in what circumstances we would recommend you watch this movie.
So, join us on July 9th for the first drop of our main episode, and then 2 days later for our drop of our minisodes.
And on Robots Radio Podcast Network. Come see us on July 9th. We love you so much already. Bye!
As the summer days passed on, the farmer ended up spending more and more time with Sebastian. Each day they would finish their chores around the farm and then make their way to the mountains to see what Sebastian was up to. Some days he would show them some progress on his latest project. Others they would just hang out by the lake and talk for hours. Once they even played the Solarian Chronicles, the game, with Sam, where the farmer saved Sebastian's life right at the final boss. They were already great friends, but to the farmer the feelings had quickly developed into something so much more. Sebastian had so much passion, so many dreams. They just knew that one day he was going to do something great. They just wish he knew that as well. They decided that they were going to do something nice for him. He definitely deserved it with how hard he worked. The next day, the farmer awoke to rain pattering on the roof. It was a late summer shower, and that meant it was the perfect day to go fishing. You see, Sebastian's favorite food was sashimi, and the farmer knew that you needed fish to make sashimi. So they set out with a rod and galoshes and made their way south to the forest river. It was still pouring when they arrived, but the farmer knew that that would only make the fish that much more active. They baited the hook and cast it into the murky deep, waiting for a bite. It wasn't too long before the rod pulled. The farmer started to furiously reel the sucker in, happy that they caught something so quickly. When suddenly, they saw the end of their line, and the old boot attached to it. Shaking their head, soaked to the bone, they removed the boot and cast off again. It took close to a rainy hour, but they finally caught a smaller bream. They slogged back to the farmhouse, soaked to the bone. It wasn't until they were walking down their muddy path when they realized that they hadn't the faintest idea on how to make sashimi. They looked at the limp fish in their hand and realized that this might be more work than they thought. Who knew that preparing raw fish for consumption was going to be so complicated? They started to walk up the stairs to the house, but stopped to grab the mail first. And lo and behold, they had a letter. It was crumpled and frayed at the edges, and a little torn. The farmer walked into the house and opened it. They could barely read the scrawled handwriting. "Hey, farmer, how you doing? I've enclosed some instructions on how to make one of my favorite fish recipes. Linus." Enclosed was a recipe card on exactly how to make sashimi. Linus? That old guy from the mountains? He knew how to make sashimi? And he knew that Sebastian liked it. The farmer's brain was racing. Was this all just a coincidence? This was too weird. But the farmer wasn't about to look a gift horse, or fish in the mouth. They got to work making the dish. A few hours later, the farmer was walking through the rain up to the mountains, favorite food in tow. They mucked up the hills to Sebastian's house, knocking loudly over the pattering rain. Robin answered, smiling and letting the farmer in. "Oh, I'm sorry. Sebby's not home right now. He usually heads down to the coast on rainy days like today." She said it in a tone of understanding, and the farmer appreciated it. They thanked Robin and started to trek back down the hills towards the coast. The storm was raging harder south of town. The farmer could barely see through the rain and wind. They covered their face with their jacket, slugging through the sandy dunes. The beach was deserted, and they could barely make out the docks through the storm. Why would he come down here in this mess? The farmer was starting to worry for him, panicking a bit that something might have happened. They made their way to the docks and finally saw a shadowed figure at the end. Pushing through, they saw that it was Sebastian, with his back turned to them, facing the sea. He slowly turned around, and the farmer stopped. His face was peaceful again, much like when he was working on his motorcycle. He perked up when he saw the farmer. "Hey, I'm surprised to see you out here in this rain." The farmer walked over to him, so now that they were both standing at the edge of the dock, looking off towards the raging sea. The water was churning, and in turn so were the farmer's insides at being so close to Sebastian. The storm was forming even stronger across the sea. Sebastian pointed to it. "Look at those dark clouds looming over the horizon." He closed his eyes, almost in pain. "I hope they come this way." With his eyes still closed, he continued. "I like this weather because it makes everyone disappear, you know? Being around people makes me feel anxious." He then opened his eyes and turned to the farmer, that coy smirk back on his face. "I don't feel that way around you, though." He laughed a little and turned back to the sea, his face becoming increasingly red in the darkened gloom of the storm. Trying to change the subject, he looked down at his clothes. "We're getting soaked." From seemingly out of nowhere, he pulled out a red and white umbrella. It contrasted with his dark clothes and hair and storming weather, but it seemed to brighten his disposition. He nodded to the farmer and motioned for them to join him. "Here, there's room for two." The farmer slid over and out from the rain. They felt the warmth burning from Sebastian's body so close, and felt a jumping happiness in their chest. It was then when they remembered the sashimi they were holding. They handed him the package, soggy from the increased storm. He smiled and looked at it with a strange wonder. "I really love this. How did you know?" His wondrous gaze drifted to the farmer's eyes, and then quickly back to the sea. The farmer continued to watch him, seeing that smirk appear on his rain-soaked face once more. The next day, the farmer woke up elated. The sun was shining through the windows, the cool early fall day drying away last night's storm from memory. The farmers started their chores, ready for a full day of farm work ahead of them. But as they went along with their plowing and watering and picking, they couldn't get the previous night out of their heads. They couldn't get Sebastian out of their head. The day went on and the feelings got stronger, so that by the end of the day, they knew what they were going to do. They were going to tell Sebastian how they felt. That evening, they started hiking up the hills toward Sebastian's house. On the way, they began going over how they would start the conversation. Would they just get into it, or let it work its way into the conversation? Would he even be home? When they rounded the last corner to his house, the farmer stopped in their tracks. Sebastian was out front on his motorcycle. It looked like he was waiting for someone. As the farmer approached, he looked up and actually let out a wide smile. "Hey, I was just about to head out. Hop on. I want to show you something." He held out a helmet and the farmer grabbed it nervously. Their plan was kind of derailed, but they now had an excuse to get close to him again. They climbed aboard, feeling the warmth radiate from Sebastian in front of them. They took off down the road and out of the valley. The tree-lined street glowed in the glimmering fall twilight. The farmer held Sebastian a little tighter, and the gold and orange foliage raced by. The dusk turned to night, and the stars opened up over their heads. The woods soon turned into craggy rocks, and Sebastian pulled off the main road up a dirt path. They climbed a bit, and then he slowed and parked the bike. They were on an outcropping jutting out from the rock face. The wooded area was below, but what immediately caught the eye was the glowing lights of a skyline in the distance. The farmer gasped as they made their way closer to the edge of the cliff. Sebastian joined them. "That's Zuzu City in the distance. I come here when I want to get away from everything and just think." The farmer stood amazed. They had lived in the city for years, seeing it as a dark prison of concrete and asphalt. But from here, it looked beautiful, alluring even. Sebastian started puffing on a cigarette. He turned away from the city with a look of deep processing in his darkened eyes. He seemed nervous. "So, what do you think?" It was a tough question for the farmer. They remembered being alone in their cramped apartment, on a crowded subway train, in the bleak office. They remembered life before they met someone who cared so much about them. "It gives me a strange, sad feeling." Sebastian looked up at the farmer, that deep look in his eyes changing to something more, something that understood. "Yeah, that's exactly how I feel too." They both continued to look on at the city in silence, a slight fall breeze rustling their clothes and hair. "The city used to draw me in, but now I'm finding myself happier at home in the valley." He slowly turned to the farmer, that deep look penetrating their senses. "Hey, I usually don't bring people to this place. In fact, you're the only one." He gave a sheepish grin, but didn't stop looking at the farmer. You know what I'm trying to say, don't you?" He shifted a little closer to the farmer and leaned in. Before the farmer knew what was happening, they leaned in as well and kissed Sebastian. It was finally happening. They found their person, the warmth within them. The wind swirled around the two as they embraced in the faint glow of the distant city. I've never played Harvest Moon. I've never played Animal Crossing. But for some reason, I decided to buy Stardew Valley over the holidays a few years back. I was in law school taking night classes at the time, while balancing a full-time job and planning for my wedding. I was as stressed out as could be, struggling through 17-hour days and not sleeping well from all of the anxieties I was facing. Then, on New Year's Day, I finally had an entire day free. So with my fiancé hungover and sleeping on the couch, I fired up the game. What happened after that is kind of a meditative blur. I played for hours, enjoying the soothing repetition of planting, watering, and picking my crops. I loved meeting the friendly townsfolk with all their quirks and personalities. And I loved helping the community out by searching for odd and specific items. It turned out that Stardew Valley was exactly what I needed in my life at the time. Each night, after having worked and attended multiple classes, I would come home and visit Pelican Town for an hour or so. It was the perfect way to relax after the stress of the day, and I think that's what also drew me to Sebastian as a character. Aside from the obvious bond of having the greatest name ever, I saw his anxieties around people and kind of related to them. I like to think that my farmer supported him through his downs and celebrated his highs, just like so many people were doing for me in my actual life. If you haven't played Stardew Valley, give it a shot. It's so much deeper than just a farming sim, and rewards the player for digging in and getting to know the characters and community. It continuously gets updated, and is the perfect world to ease into and get lost in. Okay, on to some show business. First up is the winner of our Hollow Knight giveaway. Congrats to Derek V. Anderson on Instagram for winning the prize pack. He'll get over $50 in Hollow Knight swag, including a plushie, stickers, a coaster, and more. Congrats! And if you did enter the contest but didn't win, don't fret. We'll have another one near the end of August. To up your chances in that giveaway, and every giveaway going forward, consider joining our Patreon. Not only will you get 3 bonus entries into all giveaways and many other rewards, you'll also help with some of the production costs of the show. I've personally paid hundreds of dollars to keep this show going, and I want to continue with the giveaways and to increase the quality. Any bit helps, so if you like the show, consider joining for as little as $1 a month. But if contributing financially isn't possible, I get that. You could also be like Guardian Gamer though, and submit a review on iTunes. By doing so, you help expand the reach of the show to other people, and help share these hidden stories with them. Thank you so much for the kind words, Guardian Gamer. It really makes me feel all warm and fuzzy when I see how much you guys are enjoying this show. And lastly, we're looking into getting on different podcast platforms, including Stitcher and YouTube. Keep an eye out for the announcements in the next week or so. If you're having trouble accessing the show on any specific platform, don't hesitate in letting us know on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or at our email at hiddenpixelspodcast@gmail.com. It's an easy fix and we can easily get the show to you. And that's it. Next time we're in the Elder Scrolls universe once again. This one can't wait to jump back into the lore. Okay. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
This
This episode of the Hidden Pixels podcast was written, recorded, and produced by me, Sebastian Azaro. All episode music information can be found in the show notes or on our website, hiddenpixelspodcast.com. If you like what you heard, please consider showing your support on our Patreon page at patreon.com/hiddenpixelspodcast. Every bit helps to continue to share these hidden stories. And if you like what you heard, or even if you didn't, please rate and review the show on any major podcast streaming platform. And find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram as Hidden Pixels Podcast, or on our Discord channel where we're continuing the stories after the story. Links to all are in our show notes as well. And as always, thanks for listening.
Have you ever wondered how deep the Elder Scrolls lore rabbit hole goes? Have you got a grasp of the basics and want to find out more about the universe? Written in Uncertainty is here to help you. We'll be mixing in philosophy, theology, and whatever other theory is useful with Elder Scrolls texts to untangle some of the biggest questions in the series, like what are dragon breaks, how does Chim work, where did the Dwemer go, and more. Check us out at writteninuncertainty.com or find Written in Uncertainty on any podcatcher. Thanks for listening, and catch you later in the grey maybe of Tamriel.